everybody saw that previous video, or if you felt like you didn't need it and you didn't need that review, that's great, or you can still go back and see that previous video. So that video talked about regular AR present tense conjugations, what's called the present tense indicative. Hopefully you learned that there's another present tense called the present tense subjunctive, and we're going to get to that a lot this semester. I'm pretty excited about it, actually. And so the present tense indicative, regular AR verbs, is what we covered, or what I covered in that other video that you could see if you needed that review. So I'm going to go very quickly today, and there's going to be a lot of English explanation because I want you to have this review before we get started with all of this stuff. So besides the regular present tense verbs that I've already covered, you also have a group of verbs in the present tense called stem changing verbs. And those verbs are in Spanish called verbos que cambian radicales, but they're called stem changing. Sorry, you guys will have to get used to my hand. Okay, stem changing verbs. And you have three types of stem changing verbs. You have verbs that the stem changes from O to UE. You have stems that the verb changes from E to IE, and you have verbs whose stems change from E to I. And some O to UE stem changing verbs, one of them that you're probably most familiar with is the verb poder, to be able to. When you say puedo ir al baño, you might have learned that back in high school, or puedo ir al baño, that's probably the one you learned in high school. So it's an O to UE stem changing verb. And what that means, as going back to the process of conjugation, that when you conjugate the verb, the stem changes from P-O-D to P-U-E-D. And the stem will change in every form except for the nosotros form and the vosotros form. So the endings stay the same for ER verbs, o, es, e, hemos, and en, and es. But we're going to change the stem to puede. Puedo, puedes, puede, podemos, and pueden. So notice the stem once again changes from O to UE. Sometimes you might have heard this called in a previous life boot verbs, because if you look at the chart, it forms a natural boot. That's a boot verb. And so you might have heard that called that at a previous time. Can you guys think of any O to UE verbs that besides poder? Volver. Volver isn't correct. O to UE. Volver. Good. So it's an O to UE stem changing verb. So the stem changes to vuelve, right? Vuelvo, vuelves, vuelve, volvemos, vuelven in the present tense. Good. So you've got poder and you've got volver. Now there's one other verb that exists that you're really familiar with, but it's the only one of its kind, and that is a U to UE stem changing verb. And that verb is what? You don't. Jugar is the only one that is a U to UE stem changing verb. So juego, juegas, juega, jugamos, juegan. Okay, so that's an O to UE stem changing verb. Next you have E to IE stem changing verbs. And probably going to use the verb querer as one of the first verbs, because you're all familiar with the verb querer, to want. It is an E to IE stem changing verb. So when you conjugate it, it's just going to be an ER verb in the present tense, but the stem is going to change to care. Q-U-E-R, 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 and then the nosotros form again doesn't stem change, the vosotros doesn't stem change, and then you have your same endings. Quiero, Q-U-I-E-R. Quiero, quieres, quiere, queremos, not there. Quieren, okay? Quiero, quieres, quiere, queremos, quieren. That's an E to IE stem changing verb. Another one that's very common is the verb pensar, to think. It's an E to IE stem changing verb. Pienso, piensas, piensar, etc. Can you think of any others?
Sentir.
Sentir, muy bien, sentir. Sentir, to feel, is an E to IE stem changing verb. Good. Sentir, preferir is very commonly used, preferir, so prefiero, prefieres, prefiere, etc. Okay, the next one is an E to I stem changing verb, and there's really two main ones, the verb servir and the verb pedir. Servir, to serve, pedir, to ask for or to order. And these are E to I stem changing verbs. Okay, so the stem changes to sir, 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 sir. Sirvo, sirve, sirve, sorry. Servimos, sirve. So the nosotros form doesn't change. I've messed up on the last two because I'm just going too fast. Okay? Sirvo, sirve, sirve, servimos, sirve. And there you have your three types of stem changing verbs. Simple. Yeah? You should be familiar with all of them. And you will see them again later, especially IR stem changing verbs, because they're going to have a change in the preterite tense. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to draw a line right here. So now we're moving on to the next concept. Do you have any questions on this, by the way? Okay. The next concept within the present tense indicative is going to be the irregular verbs. And they're ones you just have to memorize, and they're the most commonly used verbs, and so they are very important for you to know. And those verbs are verbs like tener, which is also an E to I stem changing verb. You have verbs like poner. You have verbs like not right now. Hacer, salir, decir, traer, venir. I said salir and she thought I was saying Siri. Come on, Siri. Okay, so these verbs are verbs that some people refer to as go verbs. The reason why they're considered go verbs is because they'll end in O, right? They're going to end in O, at the end. So tener, when it's conjugated, and I'm not going to go through and conjugate every single one of them, is tengo. And then it's going to change from an E to IE stem changing verb. Venir does the same thing. So tengo, tienes, tiene, tenemos, and tienen. And I'm sorry if my handwriting's horrible, but we're going fast. So let's just review quickly, because you should all be familiar with this. What's the yo form of poner? Pongo. Hacer? Hago. Decir? Digo. Sorry, did I pass up salir? Sorry. Salir. Salgo. Decir. Digo. Traer. Traigo. Venir. Vengo. Good. So venir is also in the other forms an E to IE stem changing verb. And then after that, they're just regular for the most part. Hacer is going to be hago, but then haces, hace, hacemos, hacen. Salir is salgo, but then it's regular. So it's only irregular in the yo form present tense. Traer is traigo, then it's just traes, trae, traemos, traen. Venir, vengo, vienes, viene, venimos, vienen. Besides these go verbs, and there's a few others that I didn't mention, but I also want to mention one thing about these go verbs. It's going to be these verbs, and then any verb that has this in it with a prefix added. So hacer is to do, but you also have like deshacer, which is to undo, is to unmake, deshacer. You have poner, which is to put, but you also have proponer, which is to propose. And you also have suponer, which is to suppose. And those verbs will also be conjugated the same as poner. Supongo. Propongo. So anything that has that. Decir is to say or to tell. Predecir, to predict. And so you're saying it, you're predicting it, and therefore it would be the same thing as predigo. Traer, well, I'm at it, is, but you also have distraer, to distract. And so you could conjugate that in the same way. Venir, you also have prevenir, to prevent. Okay, sorry, I'm going to have to erase. These verbs are very important because they're going to be irregular when you get to the preterite tense, right? With the exception of salir, they're all going to be irregular in the preterite tense. So if a verb is a go verb, or one of these irregular yo form present tense verbs, you have to memorize them because they're going to be irregular when you get to the preterite, which we're going to get to in a minute. Okay, so after you have these, you have some verbs that are just irregular, right? Ir, the most irregular, always going to be irregular. In every tense, it's irregular. It's one of the few that's irregular in every single tense. So So what is ir in the yo form present tense? Voy. Good. Someone said it. Yo voy. Tú vas. Él, ella, usted va. Nosotros vamos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes van. Very good. Ser. Soy. One of the first words you learn in Spanish 10:10, right? De donde eres, soy. So what's the to form? Eres. ¿De dónde eres? Yo soy de Casefield. O yo soy de Ogden. Él, ella, usted es. Nosotros somos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes son. Okay? And that's very important. You should all know that one very well by now. Okay? Estar is included in this because it has an irregular yo form present tense, estoy. And then after that, the only irregularity is it's going to have an accent. Estás, está, estamos, and están. Okay, those accents are important because without the accent, it means it's another word, it's a different word. Estas is different than estás. Ir, ser, estar, dar. It functions like estar, so you'll have doy, das, da, damos, dan, no accents, doy, das, da, damos, and dan. What about saber, to know? Say, yo sé, then it's just regular. Say. I'll put it up here. Saber, conjugated, yo sé, then it's just regular. Tú sabes, él sabe. What about conocer with saber? Correct. Conocer, the yo form is conozco. This is a little bit of foreshadowing for you. But when we learn the subjunctive tense later on this semester, this is extremely important because the subjunctive tense, present tense subjunctive, is formed based off of the yo form indicative tense. And so that's how you'll form the subjunctive a little bit later. So the yo form of these verbs, it's very important that you get them correct or get them memorized. Okay, good. Any questions on any of that?
So what exactly does like indicative mean, present tense indicative?
You'll learn that. Indicative means it's not subjunctive.
Okay.
So what it means is that you're indicating, you're making a statement. You're saying something that's true. It's not something that is a supposition, or it's not something that it couldn't be. It's not expressing a hope, a wish, a desire. That's way too much information, but it just means that you're saying a factual statement or asking a question, basically.
Okay.
So that is your present tense. Everybody's really familiar with it? We all good with it? Okay, let's talk preterite then, because this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky to people. Preterite tense. The ending is going to stay the same. So if you know verb conjugation endings the stem for the most part. So the stem is going to stay the same on regular verbs, and you're just going to change that one last letter, that ending. So whereas the present tense yo form ends in an O, in the present tense in the preterite tense, your first person singular yo form is going to end in E with an accent, A. Ayer yo caminé a la tienda. Yo caminé a la tienda ayer. Tú caminaste. Él, ella, usted caminó. Nosotros caminamos. It's the same between present and preterite. Caminamos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes caminaron. Okay. Yo caminé a la escuela o a la tienda ayer. ¿Sí? ¿Caminaste ayer? ¿Tú caminaste? ¿Caminaste ayer? No, caminaste. ¿Caminaste ayer? ¿Sí? ¿A dónde caminaste?
Caminé aquí.
A Weber State? Okay. ¿Caminaste ayer? ¿Sí? ¿A dónde?
Ayer es...
Ayer, no hoy, pero ayer. ¿Qué quiere decir ayer? Yesterday, good. So ayer, it's important for us to know. Okay? ¿Caminaste ayer? Sí.
Caminé.
caminaste ayer. Bien. ¿Hablaste ayer español?
Sí.
¿Sí? ¿Hablaste español? ¿Con quién hablaste?
Mi esposo.
Oh, él habla español, entonces hablaste con su esposo. ¿Alguien más habló español ayer?
Sí.
¿Sí? ¿Con quién hablaste?
Mi esposo.
¿Hablaste con tu esposo? So say a complete sentence, yo.
Yo hablaste con mi
No,
esposo.
yo.
Yo hablé
Yeah,
con
está
mi
bien.
esposo.
Okay, ella habló con su
Sorry.
esposo. No, that's what we're practicing. ¿Hablaste español? Oh, ¿tú hablaste español?
Sí, ayer vendí un carro en español.
Oh, tú hablaste con unos clientes en español ayer. Ok, bien. ¿Qué carro vendiste? ¿Qué auto vendiste? Vender, to sell. ¿Qué auto vendiste? Tú vas a decir vendí, ¿sí? ¿Qué auto vendiste?
Un Jeep.
Un Jeep. Oh, qué interesante. Yo tengo un Jeep. Sí, me gustan los Jeeps. Autos todo terreno se llaman. Autos todo terreno o Jeep. Ya, un Jeep. Bien, ella casi vendió el auto ayer en español. Qué bien. ¿Alguien más habló español? No. Nadie caminó por el parque. ¿No? Nadie caminó por el parque. ¿Alguien de ustedes corrió ayer?
Sí.
¿Corriste? ¿A dónde corriste?
Corrí en el parque con mi perro.
Oh, qué bien. Ella corrió en el parque. Nosotros, como clase, ayer, no, eso no es verdad, pero claro, supongamos, corrimos, ¿ya? Corrimos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes, corrieron. So, ER and IR verbs will have these endings. Iste, io, imos, ieron. Accents are so essential. You've got to have accents in written form, otherwise it changes what the word could mean. So the accents are crucial. Okay, bien. ¿Qué más hicieron ayer? ¿Qué más pasó ayer?
Monté mi bicicleta.
Oh, ¿montaste bicicleta en las montañas?
No.
No, ¿dónde?
En mi trainer.
Oh, ¿en la casa? Oh, entonces no fuiste, no fuiste, solo te quedaste así pedalando, no sé si es la palabra pedalando, no yendo a ningún lugar. Ajá. Yo corrí en el gimnasio en lo que se llama rueda de molino o caminador, some people call it now, I just saw in the textbook. ¿Qué es eso?
Treadmill.
Treadmill, sí, yo corrí usando la rueda de molino. Es horrible, ¿sí? Uno corre, pero no llega a ningún lugar, ¿sí? No llega a ningún lugar. Solo se queda en el mismo lugar, corriendo. Y lo peor es las escaleras, ¿sí? Sube las escaleras, pero no va a ningún lugar. Entonces, es horrible, por eso. Okay, pretérito. So that's the preterite tense of regular AR verbs. Now remember, all those irregular verbs that we just learned about in the preterite tense, they're going to be irregular here. So you just have to memorize them. And there's a lot in the preterite tense that you just have to memorize how they are conjugated. So let's take some of the most important. Hacer. Hacer. And this is going to be a review for some of you, but it's a good review. Yo, what, do you guys know it? Yo hice. Correcto. Hice. ¿Qué quiere decir en inglés? Yo hice. I did or I made. Correcto. Los dos. I did or I made. Yo hice. Tú hiciste. Hiciste. Tú hiciste. Él, ella, usted hizo. Excuse me. Hizo. H-I-Z-O. Spelling change. Hizo. Nosotros hicimos. Hicimos. And then nosotros hicimos. Y hicieron. Correcto. For the most part, the irregular verbs will have these endings. Iste, o, imos, hicieron. No accents. The difference between regular and irregular endings, no accents. So no irregular verbs have accents on them. Okay, hacer. Poner. Yo.
Puse.
Puse. I put. Tú. Pusiste. You put. Él, ella, usted. Puso. Nosotros pusimos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes pusieron. Okay. So do you see the endings? Iste, o, imos, ieron. So I want to save some time and just show you how they change to a different stem. So decir is going to change to dij. Dije, dijiste, dijo, dijimos, well, it has a spelling, it's not dijeron, it's dijeron. So that changes with decir and traer. So traer is going to change to traje, trajiste, trajo, trajimos, but it's not trajieron, it's trajeron. So these two will not have I-E-R-O-N, but just E-R-O-N. Hopefully that's something that's a review. So, decir, traer, poder. Poder is going to change to pud.
They're called,
Whoops.
it's calling someone. I think it's calling your dad.
Are you kidding me? It is calling my dad. Oh my gosh. I hate Siri right now. Siri is ruining my life.
Sometimes I am.
Sorry. Oh my gosh. I'm turning that phone off. Okay, that's ridiculous. Okay, decir, traer, and poder. Okay, any others? I'm talking saber. I don't want. Saber is going to change to soup. Supe, supiste, supo, supimos, supieron. But saber changes meaning in the preterite tense. Saber is to know, but the preterite tense of saber isn't I knew, it's I found out. Saber in the preterite tense changes to I found out. And that's also in your text. I wouldn't worry about it too much at the moment, at this very moment. We're going to be able to practice with that. Conocer is the same way in the preterite tense. Okay, so let's look at querer. Querer is going to change to quis. Quise, quisiste, quiso, quisimos, quisieron. Tener, can't forget tener, changes to tuve. Tuve, tuviste, tuvo, tuvimos, tuvieron. Tuvieron. Now remember, one of the things that I wanted to make sure we covered is tener que, right? Tener in Spanish, especially for beginning Spanish speakers, tener que is an important word, right? So tengo que estudiar, I have to, because tener que is to have to. And so now put it in the preterite, I had to, yeah? Tuve que estudiar. Esta mañana tuve que estudiar, okay? ¿Quién más tuvo que estudiar hoy? ¿Quién más tuvo que estudiar? Nadie más estudió. ¿Qué tuviste que estudiar?
Comunicación.
Ok, ella tuvo que estudiar comunicaciones. Yo tuve que estudiar español. Sí, yo tuve que estudiar español. ¿Alguien más tuvo que estudiar? No. ¿Qué tuvieron que hacer? Yo tuve que trabajar esta
Tarea.
mañana. ¿Qué?
Tarea.
Tuve que hacer tarea. ¿Tuviste que hacer tarea?
Trabajé.
Ok, trabajaste, tuviste que trabajar. Yeah, you had to work. Tuviste que trabajar. Yo tuve que trabajar. ¿Tuviste que trabajar? ¿Sí? ¿Sí qué? ¿Sí what?
Tuve trabajar.
Tuve que trabajar. Tuve que. Correcto, because tener que is to have to. Tener is just to have. So tuve que trabajar. Remember, put the verb in the infinitive after this conjugation, and you're able to say you had to do that action. Tuve que trabajar. ¿Tuvieron que estudiar español? ¿Nadie? ¿Tuvo que estudiar español? Sí. Ya saben todo. No tienen que estudiar. ¿Ya? No tienen que hacerlo. Okay. Now, one more thing with the preterite tense. Verbs that are stem changing IR verbs. Remember this concept? Verbs like dormir, morir, pedir. Okay, these verbs are stem changing IR verbs. And stem changing IR verbs will have a spelling change in the third person singular and third person plural forms only in the preterite tense. And here's the way I like to teach it. Dormir is an O to UE stem changing verb. Morir is an O to UE stem changing verb. Pedir is an E to I stem changing verb. If the verb has a two-letter stem change in the third person singular and third person plural forms, you will keep the first letter of the stem change. If it's a single letter stem change, then you just change it to that letter. Let's show you the examples and it will make more sense. So dormir in the preterite is dormir. Tu dormiste. But él, ella, usted, this O is going to change to a U. Durmió. Nosotros dormimos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes durmieron. So in the third person singular and third person plural forms, you will have a spelling change if it's an IR stem changing verb. Okay? It's a lot of qualifications. So morir, morí, moriste, murió. Morimos, murieron. Correcto, murieron. Sorry. Pedir. Simple. I asked for pedí. You asked for pediste. He or she asked for pidió. Nosotros pedimos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes pidieron. Correcto, pidieron. So notice in the third person singular and third person plural forms, you'll have a stem change. Servir is the other one, right? We just learned about. So serví, serviste, sirvió. Servimos, sirvieron. So you'll have a spelling change. We're covering like a whole semester worth of grammar in 45 minutes. No, probably an hour. Probably an hour. Okay, that's it for preterite tense, other than practice, 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 more and more practice. So those of you who need extra practice with this, and we're going to practice in class a little bit with it, but should already be learned. It'd be a good idea to go home and just study like crazy. And tell yourself, dije, dijiste, dijo, dijimos, dijeron. Traje, trajiste, trajo, trajimos, trajeron. And just go down and conjugate every verb over and over and over again. It may sound silly, but if I were you, and I really was wanting to learn all of these things very quickly, I would say that to myself, hice, hiciste, hizo, hicimos, hicieron, poner, puse, pusiste, puso, pusimos, pusieron, in my voice memos, and then I would just listen to it all night long, right? all day long, whatever it takes for you to get to this point. Because now we're entering into the 2010, which you have to know this. You have to know the imperfect, which we're going to cover right now, so that we can now start talking about when do I use preterite and when do I use imperfect. That's the very first thing in 2010, and it's the hardest thing in all of the language, really, to master. And so you've got to know this in order to be able to move on. So that's one of the reasons why this is being recorded. You can watch this over and over again. You can practice over and over again with irregular and regular preterite tense. Okay, good. Oh, one thing I wanted to say about this while we're here is the preterite tense, because this is moving into what we need to talk about. The preterite tense is a tense that is used to talk in the past when there is a specific reference or implied reference to that action being a completed action in the past that just happened. The speaker views the action as just occurring. It happened in the past. And a lot of times, because of that, you're going to use simple words like ayer, yesterday, right? So when I say ayer, if I said ayer caminé, when did that action begin? When did it end? Okay, so because of that, I'm going to use the preterite tense to talk about that action, because the speaker or the listener knows that that action is a completed action in the past. Done. It happened this day. Okay, so any word referring to a time in the past, yesterday, anoche, hace una semana, so you're saying some type of reference to when it happened. Or it can also be in context that you are you know, the speaker and the listener would understand that it was a completed action in the past. It will make more sense maybe when we talk about the imperfect tense. Now, this is good news for you because the imperfect tense is not hard to form. And there's only 3 irregular verbs. The imperfect tense is formed by taking an AR verb and changing the ending to aba. The to form changing the ending to abas. The el, ella, usted form changing to aba. The no, yo form and the el, ella, usted form is the same. The nosotros form has an accent, abamos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes, aban. Pretty easy for AR verbs. There's no stem changes. Just all verbs, except for the 3 irregulars, will follow this pattern. You drop the AR and change the ending to aba. So just a simple one would be trabajar. It's not a simple one. Trabajaba, trabajabas, trabajaba, trabajabamos, trabajaban. And hablar, right, the 2 abas. Hablaba, hablabas, hablaba, hablábamos, hablaban. ER and IR verb endings are going to be the following. Ia, all of them have accents. Ia, ias, iamos, and ian. They all have accents on the ias and only on the nosotros form of amamos. So comer, comía, comías, comía, comíamos, comían. 3 irregular verbs. Ser, and one of them is not even that irregular. Ir, of course, and ver. Ser, the yo form, imperfect tense, era. Tú eras. El, ella, usted, era. Nosotros éramos, accent. Erais, eran. Ir, iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, iban. This is not an accent. And then ver is only irregular because it keeps the e. Veía, veías, veía, veíamos, and veían. So that's it. Imperfect is easy to form. It's not as easy to use correctly. And so we need to talk briefly about, I told you, the preterite tense is used when you have a specific reference, whether stated or implied, to when that action took place in the past. The imperfect then is the opposite of that. It is a past completed action with no specific reference to the beginning or end of the action. That's the big long grammatical definition. However, there are some things that help. And those are key words. So like ayer was a key word. In the imperfect tense, there's going to be some key words. Siempre. If something always happened, you're going to use the imperfect tense when you talk about that thing. So because siempre is a key word, one of the things that the imperfect tense is used to talk about is habitual actions. If an action in the past was habitual, then you use the imperfect tense to talk about it. Siempre means always. So another one that would be, another common one is todos los días. If something happened every day in the past, you're going to use the imperfect tense to talk about that. Unless you say todos los días and then give a specific reference to the time after that. So I could say every day for 5 years I did this thing. And it was every day, it was habitual, but if I mentioned that it happened for 5 years, you will always use the preterite tense when you mention how long it happened. Does that make sense?
So what's an example in English with?
I'm gonna get there,
Oh.
I'm gonna get there. So todos los días, siempre, todos los anything. Todos los meses, todos los años,
What about,
todos los veranos, todos los anything related to time.
what about like cada día?
Yeah, cada día, yeah, that's good. Cada día, every day, each day. Todos los días is every day, cada día is each day. So again, that's another example when you're saying that that was a habitual action. Okay, I'm gonna come back to the next thing. Your question was an example.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is another good one. De niño. As a child, okay? So de niño, if you said as a child I did this, you would use the imperfect tense to talk about it because you're saying at some point in the past this happened. So de niño yo montaba a caballo. Yo vivía en Rigby, Idaho. This is a true story. Okay? Yo vivía en Rigby, Idaho, y yo montaba a caballo. What I'm saying here is, as a child, I used to ride horses. Not I rode a horse. That would be what? Preterite. As a child, I used to ride horses. I lived in Rigby, Idaho. So it's an ongoing action in the past.
So like with the imperfect, you can, like with English, you would use like montaba, you implied saying used to ride.
Right. It's implied, right? And that's why it's important to use it correctly. Because if you say, de niño yo monté a caballo, that indicates to the person you're talking to that you did it one time. If you said one time, as a child I rode a horse, using the preterite, it's I did that once. But if you say this, it's a habitual action. Now, if you said 2 times, then you would use the preterite tense, even though it happened 2 times. If you said 5 times, you'd still use the preterite because you've indicated when it happened. But this indicates that, to me, listening, that you used to ride horses a lot. Something you did as a child. It was a habitual action.
So if you add it, you lived in Rigby until you were 6, then it would be preterite?
No. If I said I lived in Rigby, Idaho for 6 years, then I would use the preterite.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to be, this
A time
began here
frame.
and this began here. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, as long as you mention the time, you've got to use. So I always tell people it's crazy, you would never really hear this, but you could say something happened every day for 1,000 years. But since you said it happened for 1,000 years, you use the preterite tense. That's the proper grammatical way.
But
to
if you're
use it.
giving an age, then it would still be the imperfect, because it's
Yes,
giving a
yes.
time frame.
Correct. And one of the things is whenever you talk about how old you were in the past, you would always use the imperfect. Cuando yo tenía 6 años. Cuando yo tenía 11 años. When I was 12, when I was 13, always uses the imperfect tense to talk about your age in the past. And we're going to talk, we're going to spend a lot of time on this. We're actually going to spend a lot of time on it. Because it's a difficult concept in the Spanish language. And I have some great resources. We'll just do it right now. Because I'm ready for it.
Do we talk like this in English? I don't know if that's a funny question, but like.
Used to, yeah, just saying like I used to. Yeah, when it's implied, I think, more in English, right? If you're telling somebody, yeah, when I was a child, I rode horses.
We also put it to the noun though, like you rode a horse or you rode horses. So I don't know, it's like, I don't know. Couldn't it also be thought of as kind of background information?
Yeah, we're gonna get to all the reasons. I was just giving you a small tidbit of all of the reasons and ways that it's one's used and the other one's not used. We're getting into that right now. So this is gonna come up here. It's a lot of information, I know, to come at you, but that's all the stuff that we've covered up until this point.
Do you want to turn your camera to face?
I'm going to,
Okay.
just 1 second. Okay, this chapter doesn't have a whole lot of grammar. And so this is the main grammatical concept. So we can spend a lot of time on it, and we're going to spend a lot of time on it. Come on, no. Okay, that's as good as it's gonna get. Okay. If I can get this document camera to work. So this is an ancient textbook, And I like the way that it describes the preterite and the imperfect. So we're going to use this ancient textbook because it just does a decent job that I really like. Look at the two examples that you see on the board. Here we have, at the top, a film strip, right? And then you have a picture, Polaroid. That's how old this textbook is, a Polaroid. And then you have the sentence, en la fiesta, la gente cantaba y bailaba. Por eso el Señor llamó a la policía. So this is what was going on when this happened. So the use of the preterite and the imperfect together is to narrate and to say what happened against that background. So you mentioned background information. And we're going to get more into this as we talk. The preterite, so this is an example of both of them in the same sentence. The preterite narrates a specific action in the past or a series of completed past actions. So it's kind of like what I told you about. It's a completed, viewed as completed, happened action in the past. If there was an accident out front and we wanted to say there was an accident, you'd use the preterite. It just happened. It was an accident. So specific past actions. So look at the example that you see here. En 1992, mi familia fue a Colombia. In 1992, my family went to Colombia. Look at the timeline. It happened. You've stated when it happened. Therefore, you're going to use the preterite tense. En 1992, mi familia fue a Colombia. Look at the next one down. It used to describe a completed series of past actions. Entré en la casa, fui a la cocina, tomé un vaso de agua fría, right? So this happened, then this happened, then this happened. So a series of completed past actions. Let's contrast that before we go on to the next. Let's contrast that with the imperfect. So the imperfect uses, you see right here, the imperfect, in contrast, it's almost the same sentence. The first sentence was, en 1992, mi familia fue a Colombia. The imperfect describes repetitive or habitual past actions or a series of repetitive or habitual past actions. Antes íbamos a Colombia todos los años. When did it begin? We don't know. When did it end? We don't know. It's not stated. And that just means we used to go to Colombia every year. So if you have the word antes, what does antes mean? ¿Qué quiere decir antes? Before. And a verb in the imperfect tense, you are stating you used to do that action. Antes with a verb in the imperfect is I used to do that. Yo antes montaba a caballo. I used to ride horses. Not one time, no, una vez monté a caballo, but I used to a lot when I was a kid. So it's a habitual action I'm describing. Now look at the next one down. Todos los días, yo entraba en la casa, iba a la cocina, tomaba un vaso de agua fría. Why is it all in the imperfect?
Say exactly when.
What's the key word? Todos los días. Yes. If something happened every day, unless you then, comma, clarify when, comma, then you're going to use the imperfect tense to describe that action. Okay. So I really like how this gives you this visual. An ongoing action in the past is represented by a squiggly line, something that was ongoing on the timeline. The X indicates something that interrupts that timeline. This happened on the timeline. And I like how it uses timelines. So here's the timeline, the imperfect. This happened. I was walking down the street and I saw my friend. This was what was going on. This happened. I was eating my meal. I choked on a hot dog. Whatever just comes to mind. Okay? This is what was going on. This is what happened. And you also saw that before you can have on this timeline what happened, what happened, what happened without stating what was going on, because that's part of speech. You don't always have to state what was going on. You can just say this happened and this happened and this happened, right? You're narrating with the imperfect tense. It's the background information. And then the X, the preterite tense, is what happened in the story at specific points of the timeline. So we're still not done.
Can you just make a sentence with that real quick? So if I said, caminaba a la calle, and then veí mi amigo?
Vi a mi amigo, yeah.
Okay,
Cuando yo caminaba por la calle, vi a mi amigo.
okay.
Now, you bring up another point. Caminaba, using your same sentence, caminaba indicates that it was an ongoing action, right? That just in the imperfect tense by itself indicates that. But you can also put the verb estar in the imperfect tense, estaba, and put the caminar in the present participle, and that would be caminando, or the gerund, estaba caminando. Both of these are the same, really. This one you might hear more often, especially amongst people who are learning the language, estaba caminando, because they don't realize that caminaba by itself indicates also that it was an ongoing action. This literally means I was walking. This could mean I walked as a child, I was walking one time, anything in the past. It just was going on in the past, caminaba. But this one literally means I was walking. Okay? Any questions? Good questions. Okay. Let's go back to the preterite. We're going to bounce back and forth. So I already mentioned this one. Part B, that the preterite is used to talk about an action that occurred over a period of time for which specific time limits or boundaries are set. That's what we kind of focused on, and I'm trying to get that point across. If you ever mention how long it happened, you'll use the preterite tense. From 1992 to 1998, this happened. Mi familia vivió en España 6 años. And you didn't say when it began, but you said the time period that it happened, for 6 years. Mi familia vivió en España 6 años. So, contrast that with the imperfect tense. Mi familia vivía en España. My family used to live in Spain. We lived in Spain. Okay. So you can see a little bit the contrast. Let's go back to the preterite. The beginning or end of an action is viewed as something that just happened. So especially with the verbs empezar and terminar, that's terrible right there. Sorry. How do I fix that? Oh, the change came? Okay. La película empezó a las 9, cuando la película terminó, salimos. So empezar means to begin, terminar means to end. So the beginning of something and the ending of something is viewed as a completed past action, and so you use the preterite tense to talk about that. Okay. Again, contrast that with, well, that's the end of the preterite tense. So let's go back to this one here. This is a new one. Film strip, this is what was going on. Polaroid, this happened. Ella, what was she doing? Estaba leyendo cuando él entró. Yeah? He entered. Ella leía or estaba leyendo, just like I said up here, cuando él entró. This was going on when this happened. Okay. You can also have both actions on the timeline taking place in the imperfect tense, which would be on a visual this. This was going on while this was going on. And usually the word while will be in there, mientras. Yo caminaba mientras mi perro corría. I was walking while my dog was running. Both of them it wasn't I was walking and this happened. It was I was walking and this was going on. Two things going on simultaneously. Yo enseñaba español mientras los estudiantes tomaban apuntes. I was teaching Spanish while they were taking notes. Notice it was in the past, both of them ongoing actions. And then another thing, especially in storytelling, is what you see in this part right here, where you've got the scene being set, okay? And then the preterite tense interrupting that scene. So this book is really weird. It has a lot of references to bombs exploding. But this one says, mientras caminábamos por la calle, while we were walking down the street, explotó la bomba. The bomb exploded. So this is the scene, this is what was going on, this happened. A lot of times people like to visualize you know how you can be watching a movie or something and then like a thought bubble pops up and that person goes back to a previous time. Everything in that past time would be mostly the imperfect tense because he's viewing all of this as what was going on in the past, not really what happened. So film strips and those types of things give good examples. Okay? So background action to an action that occurred is similar to what we talked about. This is what was going on when this happened. Era invierno cuando fui a Chile por primera vez. It was winter when I went to Chile for the first time. This is what was going on. It was winter. This happened. Typically, anytime you make reference to a time in the past or anything referring to time, and you want to say it was winter, it was it was summer, it was 1 o'clock, it was 2 o'clock, it was a cold morning. Any type of reference to that past time, using a reference to time in the past, you will use the imperfect to reference that. So era un invierno, era verano de 1982. So think about it, like it was a cold night in 1992. Jimmy was walking down the street. All of that's going to be what was going on, setting the scene. And he was thinking to himself as he walked. All that's imperfect. He was thinking to himself as he walked how much he liked this girl. Okay, I'm making this up as I go along. And then she called him. So what happened? Yeah, preterite happened. All of that stuff was going on, imperfect, and then the preterite happened. And that is how it's used in stories and things like that.
So as long as you say like, even like, it was in 1992 because you don't know when it ended, it stays imperfect.
Preterite.
Or.
Any
yeah.
reference to when it happened is preterite.
But you said in.
It doesn't have to have a reference to the beginning and end of the action, but the imperfect tense doesn't have a beginning or end. It doesn't have a reference to the beginning or end. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So if you said in 1992, you're going to use the preterite tense.
Okay.
Unless, again, there's things that trump things, right? In 1992, every day I did this. Does that make sense? Then you would change to the imperfect because you're saying it happened every single day. You're saying it was habitual.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Then you could get technical. In 1992, every day for 2 months, then it would be preterite because you're saying every day for 2 months. Yeah, you've indicated when it began and when it ended. And it gets tricky. Like I said, to get this right, first of all, this is what you have to do. This is where Spanish gets difficult for some people. You have to know all these preterite conjugations. You have to know all the irregulars. And now you know the imperfect, and now you've got to decide when do I use that irregular verb correctly and when do I use the imperfect. And that's really a difficult concept, but it's fun to try and master if you're into mastering things like this. You want to be good at it for sure. And people get by without it. People get by without being good at it. And you can, but you're going to be misunderstood in certain circumstances. And that's why it's important. Okay, very good. We're going to call it, okay? That's a lot of information coming at you. The next thing we're going to cover is get into the chapter with the chapter vocabulary and stuff. And so I don't want to